Heavy Iron Studios is a company of some pretty cool dudes. Throughout the 2000s, they fueled our childhoods with licensed games spanning from Scooby-Doo to Ratatouille. One such game was the movie tie-in game for the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, typically referred to as TSSM. In this game, you take control of SpongeBob and Patrick as you platform, slide, and drive throughout the plot of the movie, with the goal of getting the crown, saving the town, and Mr. Krabs. The worlds that Heavy Iron built for this game are beautiful, and they fit perfectly into the SpongeBob universe, despite deviating from the plot of the movie sometimes. And for the keen-eyed among us, Heavy Iron even sprinkled in some Easter eggs across the world. These Easter eggs only added to the charm of the world, and really showed the love and care that the devs at Heavy Iron poured into this game. They even left one Easter egg for those who are still exploring the world after they completed the game, and for those who are on the prowl for an extra challenge. Once you collect 50 tokens, the game's main collectible, you can drop down at this section in the final platforming level. Welcome to Planktopolis, minions. Something to note, 50 tokens is how many you need to unlock the final level, defeat the final boss, and finish the game. So only if you have enough tokens to beat the game does Heavy Iron reveal this Easter egg to you. After dropping down, walk over here to the side and a text box will show up, telling you Heavy Iron's best times for each of the driving and sliding levels. Now, being a speedrunner, I love this Easter egg. I think it's super neat. But being a router, this Easter egg kind of gets me thinking. What route did the developers take to get these times? Well, there's only one way to find out. Sorta. To determine what route the devs took on each level, we'll be recreating Heavy Iron's best times. In recreating these times, we have to make a couple of assumptions. Our first assumption is that these times were set on the final version of the game. We don't know how different beta builds were to the final release, but we do only have the final release. So if we're going to attempt to recreate these times, we have to work with what we have. We're also going to assume that these times were set on the PlayStation 2 version of the game. This actually matters because each version of the game has the Paddy Wagon drive at different speeds. Based on files and events within the game, it's very likely that this game was primarily developed for the PlayStation 2, making it most likely that that's the version these times were set on. With those assumptions out of the way, let's go recreate Heavy Iron's best times. Starting with Sundae Driving 101, I approached the level performing no shortcuts and using no nitros, just in case the devs also didn't use any. Doing this, I got a 2:44, which was 7 seconds off of Heavy Iron's best time. At this point, I started using nitros off of ramps, since there's some manlies to guide you off of them, and slippery surfaces, since it kinda feels slow. In addition to doing this, I also started incorporating some shortcuts. The two obvious ones to me were this one at the beginning of the level, and this one in the park. These two shortcuts were easy enough to find and hit consistently, and doing these two shortcuts got me a 2:35. Which was 2 seconds faster than what I was aiming for. So the devs were doing these shortcuts, but something else they were doing in the level must have been slower. Throughout the level, there are multiple options for paths that you can take, but for most of them, it's pretty obvious what the faster path is. That is, except for this tunnel midway through the level. The fastest path is on the right side, since although it looks like a wider turn, it doesn't have to do a whole extra spiral that the left path does. If this spiral wasn't there, the left path would be faster, since it would just be a sharper turn around this corner. And since this path looks like it could be faster, but it's actually slower, I decided to incorporate it into my route. Driving through the level with both shortcuts, the slower left tunnel path, and nitroing only on ramps and through slippery surfaces allowed me to match Heavy Iron's time of 2:37. Next up is Rub-a-Dub. And I knew that Heavy Iron didn't do any massive shortcuts, but it had honestly been so long since I'd played this level without shortcuts that I wasn't sure how long it was without any. So I played the level casually and got a time of 2:57. With 14 seconds to shave off, I had a pretty good idea of what shortcut Heavy Iron must have taken. At this point, before the fourth target, the slide you're on is awfully close to a later part of the slide. With a double jump, you can jump up to this part in the slide, skipping a decent bit of it. And after incorporating this shortcut and tightening up my movement, I pretty quickly tied Heavy Iron's 2:43. For no Weenie Parking, there isn't really much room for shortcuts like there was on Sundae Driving. I just had to find the fastest way around this course and use my nitros off ramps as I did in the last driving level. I did make an exception to the nitro ramp rule in this level though, since you grab more nitros than ramps that you jump off of. And there's no way the devs just wasted nitros by not using them. So I used my extra nitros near the end of the level. With tight driving and that aforementioned nitro change, I got myself a 2:54 in a relatively short amount of time. Next up, we had Rock Slide, and when I first saw these times, Rock Slide was one of the two levels that stood out to me as obviously impressive. Like, how did the devs manage a 3.5 minute Rock Slide time on this final version of Rock Slide? Doing Rock Slide with no shortcuts, I didn't even finish the level before deciding that I needed to change my game plan. Now, as a speedrunner for the game, I'd thought for years that the devs must have missed so many skips in this level. I mean, the level starts you at the top of the trench and you have to slide all the way down to the bottom. In a level structured like that, I thought that the devs probably would have patched any shortcuts that they could have found to have players beat the level as intended. Now, I'm sure that they patched some, but they definitely abused others. To tie Heavy Iron's best times in this level, I had to do this damage boost on the eel at the beginning of the level, this drop at the lamppost on an extra path, and this jump from a tunnel onto the top of another tunnel, skipping a part where you go inside a monster. All three of these abuse the absence of out-of-bounds triggers, and I had honestly thought that Heavy Iron just missed a couple of these spots when testing. But now I see that this wasn't a bug, and this was a feature, and that honestly makes me love this level even more. After implementing these shortcuts and really tightening my movement, I matched Heavy Iron's 333, and I moved on to Sundae Driving, which was the level that took the most time to recreate Heavy Iron's best time. Here's the deal. Similar to No Weenie Parking, this level has 3 laps. Different from No Weenie Parking, new options for paths open up on each lap. If the Heavy Iron devs thought a path was fast, then they must have taken it every lap that they were able to. But whenever a new path opens in this level, it's just slower than the ones you can take on the first lap. And the issue was that when I did take that first lap path, all 3 laps, I was getting times that were 5 to 7 seconds faster than Heavy Iron's best time. And based on how I had to drive in the previous 2 levels, I refused to believe that I saved that much time over just driving better. So I went back to the drawing board. After some trial and error, I determined that the devs had to have taken this water slide, which is only accessible on the final lap. Now, I can imagine why one would think this is faster. You avoid having to deal with this gumball launcher, and it spits you out at the start of the last tunnel. However, it's a water slide, so it's slippery the whole way down. And we've been playing under this assumption that Heavy Iron knew these slippery surfaces were slow and nitroed over them whenever possible. And I was not going to be able to nitro through this whole water slide. But considering that Heavy Iron would take the fastest path once it opens up, they had to have taken this path. So after many attempts, I finally matched Heavy Iron's time. After learning that Heavy Iron's best time in Google Eyes and Smelly Knacks was a 123, I knew exactly what they had to do. Gesk is already a pretty fast level to do the time challenge in, but there's no way they got this time without abusing a certain checkpoint. After you complete the hose section, you hit a checkpoint somewhere around this red wire. And dying here respawns you at a completely different point on the red wire, which is much closer to the end of the level. After just a couple of attempts and removing some unconscious corner cutting, I got the 123 that Heavy Iron got. And finally, we end on the drive of the Knucklehead McSpazatron. This level is pretty cool in that it's sandwich driving, but backwards and in turmoil from Plankton's takeover of the city. This level is relatively straightforward, with sticking to nitroing off of ramps and through slippery puddles, as well as an extra nitro use here at the end of the park. I was able to tie Heavy Iron's 229. I had initially thought that this nitro next to the final ramp was slow, since it makes you take longer to get to the ground, but it turns out that the trigger for the end of the level is actually all the way near the Krusty Krabs instead of at the bottom of the level. So nitroing off is faster, which makes sense since the devs placed this nitro here. And with that, we're done. I've recreated Heavy Iron's best times in each of the driving and sliding levels, and I honestly learned a bit doing so. The team at Heavy Iron were definitely better sliders than drivers, given their rock slide and Gesk times being so impressive. They also took routes and driving levels that felt fast, but weren't actually faster, as we saw in Sandwich Driving's tunnel and Sundae Driving's water slide. Although I was able to tie Heavy Iron's times, there's no guarantee that this is the routes that they took in each of these levels. So if you're interested in this challenge and you want to find different routes that manage to tie their times, give it a try and let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you tune in for the next one.